Hello, my name is Ollie, and today in this video we will look at some basic strategies for the board game Clans of Caledonia. I play on Board Game Arena using the player name Ollie Helm, so if you're interested, you can also check out my game history for Clans to see how I implement the strategies mentioned in this video. Just a couple of things before we start. First, I'm assuming you are already familiar with the basic rules and gameplay. If not, have a look at the official How to Play video. There is a link in the video description below. Second, these strategies will be discussed from the perspective of a 3-player game, though the strategies also apply to 2 and 4-player games. So let's start by how you win this game. You win by getting the most victory points. So let's see where these points typically come from. From looking at hundreds of games played by the top players on Board Game Arena, or BGA, roughly half the points come from the exported goods when completing contracts. 1/4 of the points come from the end of round glory tiles, and everything else, which includes having the most settlements, contracts completed, along with end of game goods produced and money, makes up the last quarter. Basically, to get victory points, you need to produce goods and animals that will ultimately get used for completing contracts and glory tiles. Of course, to produce the goods and animals, you need to place the relevant units on the game board, and to place any units, you need money. Therefore, earning money is critical in this game. Clans is a typical worker placement strategy game, meaning you need to build a strong production engine in the first few rounds and then go after the victory points on the later rounds. There are several ways you can earn money, or what I call monetary equivalents, in Clans. But first, maybe I should discuss why money is so important, especially early in the game. Remember, completing contracts is what gives you the majority of your victory points, but you need income to place the units that produce goods and animals for completing those contracts. Therefore, the value of producing income and goods versus using the goods to complete contracts for victory points changes throughout the game. In the early rounds, money is more valuable, while in the later rounds, completing contracts becomes more valuable. Simplistically, in rounds 1 and 2, you put your workers and other units down, and if you have goods, you sell them for money to place more workers and units down. In round 3, you complete your first contract, but still place units down, while in round 4, you might complete 1 or 2 more contracts and build a few more units, until finally in round 5, you only complete contracts. There are obviously plenty of what I call situational exceptions, but you can use this idea as a general base strategy. Once again, looking at the games from the top players on BGA, we see the following average number of contracts filled per round. What is important to notice in this table is that an increasing number of contracts gets fulfilled in every next round. Turns out that on average, the top players are completing their first contract in either the first or second round because of a situational exception. For example, there are a small number of contracts that are beneficial to complete early in the game, as they produce a lot of income for a relatively small cost. I will say more about these special contracts and just contracts in general in a separate video. For now, I want to keep us focused on the main point of building your engine first and then completing contracts later. Let's look at an example of why income is so important early in the game. To keep things simple, we'll assume that the cost to buy 1 cheese stays at $10 for the entire game. Suppose that you have a contract in round 1 that requires 2 cheeses to complete. You can buy those 2 cheeses for $20 in round 1 and then complete the contract. Or you can use the $20 to place a woodcutter and a miner on 2 hexes costing $2 each. That woodcutter will earn $4 after each round, and the miner will earn $6. So when you get to round 5, that woodcutter and miner has earned you a combined $40. Therefore, in round 5, you can now buy 4 cheeses. Thus, by using your money to produce income instead of buying goods in the market, you end up getting twice as much cheese in the game, albeit at a later time. The previous example suggested putting a woodcutter and a miner down so that you could earn more money to be used later in the game. Of course, you could just as well place a cow and a dairy on the board to produce the cheese so that you don't have to buy it for your contract. In this case, producing goods works just like earning more income with workers. Earlier in the game, it is usually better to produce the goods rather than buying them. In our cheese example, suppose you place a cow and a dairy on a $1 and a $2 hex for a total cost of $20. After 2 rounds, you will have produced the 2 cheeses needed to complete the contract. But the dairy keeps producing for the next 2 rounds too. Even better, you could sell the cheese produced at the end of round 1 to earn a bit of income, which can then be reinvested into another unit, such as a cow, that produces more goods. There are times when it is more economical to buy goods. In reality, the market is not always selling cheese at $10, and you can always use neighborhood bonuses to buy cheese for a $3 discount. Continuing with our cheese example, suppose it still costs $20 to place a cow and dairy to produce a cheese. But now, cheese sells for $7, and we are in round 3. Placing a cow and a dairy in round 3 costs $20, but it will only produce 3 cheeses for the rest of the game, for a current value of $21. It is marginally better to produce than to buy, all else being equal. But what if you can place a unit next to an opponent's dairy? You can then buy cheese at a $3 neighborhood discount, or $4 per cheese. In this case, you spend only $12 to get 3 cheeses compared to $20 for producing them. Now that we see the importance of earning income, let's look at 5 different ways we can get money or monetary equivalents. Worker income, contract rewards, selling goods at the market, clan specialties, and ports. First, any worker units placed on the game board produce income at the end of the round. This is the easiest and most direct way to earn income. Generally, place workers down as soon as you can, keeping in mind that clan specialties might mean that there are other priorities, such as placing cows down first when you are playing Clan Cunningham. After round 3, there's usually no value in putting workers down or getting the worker upgrade. Let's look at an example of why that is the case. Suppose you can place a woodcutter down in round 4 for a total of $7 by placing on a $1 hex. The woodcutter will earn $4 at the end of the round, so it takes 2 rounds for the investment to pay off. Therefore, putting a worker down in round 4 is usually a poor investment because you will only have access to $4 of income from that worker in round 5. And yet, you paid $7 for that privilege. The next method for earning income is from contract rewards. Some contracts give back money, a free expansion, and or free upgrades when completed. Free expansions and upgrades are examples of monetary equivalents. Free expansions often happen on $5 and $6 hexes, so one could loosely value the expansion at $5, while the free upgrade can be used to make the technology upgrade cost only $5, or to get a free merchant or shipping upgrade. So the upgrade can be loosely valued at $4 or $5. While the contract rewards are nice, you must give goods and or slaughter animals for the contract. So it usually costs more in goods value than what you are getting back in contract rewards. Therefore, unless you're playing Clan McEwen, using contracts is a weak option for earning income. I will speak much more about contracts in a separate video. Another way to earn income is to sell your goods in the market. Early in the game, it is usually better to sell your goods than to keep them for completing contracts. I discussed the benefits of selling goods earlier with the cheese example, but let's look at another example. Suppose wool is selling for $4 and you have 2 wool. You can use the wool to complete your contract for points or sell the wool for $8. With the $8, suppose you can place a woodcutter on a $2 hex. After 2 rounds, you will have generated $8 in income to earn back the original investment, but you keep generating income in the remaining rounds. If you start at round 1 with those 2 wool, then selling them and placing a woodcutter results in $16 of income by round 5 that can then be used to buy 4 wool instead of the original 2 you started with. Now, you're unlikely to hold a first round contract until round 5, but the idea is that it is typically better to invest in producing assets during the earlier rounds than using them to complete contracts. The next way to earn income is based on clan abilities. Each clan has a special ability that often either helps produce more income or reduce the cost of placing units, which is an indirect way of getting income, but just in reverse. Generally, you want to maximize the benefit of your clan as much as possible. For example, Clan Cunningham gets income for the milk produced from your cows. That makes placing cows more valuable than workers. A $9 cow returns $8 at the end of the round for an 89% return on investment, whereas a woodcutter returns $4 from $6, a 67% return, and a miner gets $6 from $10 for a 60% return. But even better, place workers and cows down, and you could easily be making $30 to $40 more income than your opponents each round. Clan Robertson is a clan that benefits indirectly with reduced hex costs on deltas. $3 saved on an expansion is equivalent to $3 earned on income, but is in fact better because you get the benefit immediately instead of waiting until the income is produced for the next round, like with Clan Cunningham and Milk. Each of the clans and their specific strategies will be discussed in more detail in a separate video. Finally, ports can be used to get a one-time benefit in income directly or indirectly. For example, the $10 port gives you money directly, which makes it slightly better than other ports since the benefit is not dependent on things like selling goods received from the basic or processed goods ports. On the other hand, the animal slaughter port is an example of one that gives indirect income, since it saves you having to spend about $9 or $10 depending on whether you avoid slaughtering a sheep or a cow, respectively. Each of the ports and their best usages as they pertain to the different clans will be discussed in more detail in a separate video. Well, that sums up the general strategy for Clans of Caledonia. Get your production engine going early and reap the benefits to gain victory points from completing contracts in the later rounds. Thank you for watching and listening to this video. Feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments and check out more Clans of Caledonia strategy videos in the links below. Happy playing!